That evening, when I asked Jim, my grandson, what he wanted for dinner, instead of the usual response of hamburgers or pizza that you'd expect from a kid, he seemed more perplexed by my question than anything, as if he was holding back. "What's the matter? You can tell me what you like. I'll make anything for you." Since he didn't answer with his favorite, I felt like pushing him further would seem like I was blaming him, so I didn't ask any more and told him to watch TV in the living room while I prepared dinner. I decided to prepare something that I thought kids would like and called Jim to the dining table when dinner was ready. However, Jim wouldn't sit down at the dinner table laid out in front of him.
"What's the matter? Don't you want to eat?"
Jim shook his head vigorously in response to my question.
"Then why not?"
Jim asked me with a shocked expression. "Grandma, is it okay for me to eat today?" I thought I must have misheard him, suspecting I was going deaf. But when I asked again, the words that came back from him confirmed I hadn't misheard.
"Huh? What do you mean, is it okay for me to eat today? You're supposed to eat 3 meals a day, right?"
Further questioning led Jim to suddenly run out to the yard and start pulling weeds. Surprised by his sudden strange behavior, I told him,
"Stop that!"
and carried him back inside from his weed pulling. "Why? Why can't I do it? Grandma, I'm hungry."
"You're hungry, right? That's why I prepared dinner for you. So why start pulling weeds?"
"Because Mom always says I can't eat without helping out somehow." The words that Jim continued to spill out shocked me, and I sought to understand the full story. Then, a shocking truth was revealed. My name is Sarah. At 22, I fell head over heels for Joe, who transferred to my department from another region, and I desperately approached him at work and in our personal lives. We lived close by and eventually started meeting up after work, regardless of our different finishing times, growing close enough to commute home together. One day on the way home, in a packed train, Joe moved closer to protect me, and my heart wouldn't stop racing. In the midst of the crowded people, I found myself whispering,
"Could you consider dating me?"
Holding on to the sleeve of Joe's suit, I confessed with tears welling up from embarrassment. At that time, I must have looked pretty sly. But Joe blushed at my words, saying,
"Of course, Sarah."
Despite the crowd around us, we kissed and began dating successfully. Everything happened quickly after that. We started living together soon after our relationship began, got married at lightning speed within a year, and were blessed with a child. Having always dreamed of a happy married life, naming our child Mike together was a moment of peak happiness. But that happiness didn't last long. When Mike was 3, I grew suspicious of Joe's unusually late returns home. With the help of a friend who worked at the same company, I discovered Joe was leaving work on time but was seen entering a hotel with a younger female colleague. That was when I first learned of Joe's late returns being due to his meetings with this younger woman. A clear case of infidelity. Once confronted with undeniable evidence, Joe admitted to the affair. Our seemingly happy marriage crumbled, and I left Joe with Mike, slamming down my ring and divorce papers. As a single mother, I juggled work and household duties, raising Mike, who saw my efforts and did his best to help around the house to ease my burden. I remember tearing up in front of other parents during a school event, when Mike wrote in his essay that his dream was to make life easier for his mom. Now Mike, at 27, has grown up and recently expressed his wish to introduce his longtime girlfriend as his fiancée, showing his mature side. Meet Mary. "Mom, I'm thinking I want to marry Mary." Mike introduced Mary, who impressed me with her confident and cool demeanor. "If Mike has chosen her, I won't oppose. She seems nice."
"Really? So you approve of our marriage?"
"Yes, but make sure you keep her happy because a good one like her is hard to find." Got it?
I understand. Mary, let's build a happy home together. Yes. Thank you, Sarah.
I intuitively felt Mike and Mary were a good match and gave my blessing for their marriage.
Congratulations on your marriage, Mike, Mary.
I found myself shedding tears of joy and nostalgia at their wedding. A year after their happy times, a third beloved member of the family, Jim, was born. Both Mike and I were present for Jim's birth, and it's an overwhelmingly sweet memory to have cried with joy at his arrival, especially seeing Mike, a child lover, cry even more than Mary, who had endured the labor, was a sight of happiness for a mother. Years later, Mike contacted me with news that he was going to work in a different region alone and asked if I could occasionally check on Mary and Jim during his absence.
I think they'll be fine, but Jim is getting to that age where he's a handful, and I worry. You don't have to do it every day, maybe just once a week.
Mike's concern was understandable. Indeed, as a child, Mike was quite the handful, always disappearing the moment you took your eyes off him. It's challenging for a single woman to care for a sensitive child.
I understand. It's Mike's request, and I want to see my adorable grandson too.
So, reassured, Mike went on his solo assignment, and I planned to visit the two on weekends. Feeling awkward about visiting empty-handed, I packed some of Jim's favorite snacks and some durable, homemade food items in Tupperware. When I rang the bell and notified them of my arrival through the camera-equipped intercom, Mary greeted me at the door amidst noisy footsteps.
Eh? Sarah, what brings you here today?
Mike's been nagging about being worried for you too while he's away on his solo assignment.
Oh, is that so? Sorry for the mess, but please come in.
I felt a slight unease at Mary's momentarily troubled expression, but considering it was an unexpected visit, such a reaction seemed natural. Inside, Jim, who was drawing in the living room, greeted me with a smile. It had been a while since I last saw him, and naturally, he had grown taller. Once mistaken for a girl because of his cute baby face, he now had the distinct look of a mischievous boy.
Here. I brought some gifts. Snacks and some food I made. Feel free to eat it.
Thank you. Mike really worries too much. Please make yourself at home today, Sarah. Suggested by Mary, I spent a wonderful time playing board and card games with Jim and watching his favorite cartoons, enjoying our reunion to the fullest. For dinner, we had the food I brought and what Mary and I cooked together. As we started eating, I felt a slight oddness in Jim's voracious eating, reminiscent of starving children overseas. However, this was merely a comparison, as Jim had Mary as a mother.
Jim, you don't have to rush.
No one's going to take your food away. There's no way he hasn't eaten.
Jim, you don't have to rush. No one is going to take it away from you.
Despite my urging for Jim to eat more slowly as he desperately devours the food, he seems not to hear me, completely engrossed in the meal before him.
Jim has been going through a growth spurt recently, and he's always like this at meals. It's like my parenting is to blame, I'm sorry.
Oh, he's in his growth phase. That's right, he needs to eat a lot now to grow big and strong. Hearing about the growth spurt, I was convinced and moved some of the food I had on my plate to Jim's. After finishing dinner and doing the dishes while chatting with Mary, I decided it was time to go home as it was getting late in time for my bus. A few months later, I received an unusual call from Mary.
Sarah, I'm sorry to bother you suddenly. It seems Mike fell ill while he was out, and I need to go take care of him. Could you look after Jim for a while? I don't mind at all, but is Mike okay? Should I go instead?
I offered to take care of things instead, thinking Mary had her hands full with Jim, but Mary shook her head, saying she couldn't impose on me and entrusted me with Jim's care. I can understand the worry about one spouse being ill and far away. Taking Mary's feelings into account, I promised to take good care of Jim, leaving Mike's care to Mary. Mary said she might not be able to contact me for a while since she'll be busy taking care of Mike, and she asked me to reach out if anything comes up, insisting on this point for some reason. While slightly puzzled, I took this as her wanting to focus entirely on Mike's care, and I saw Mary off to care for Mike, along with Jim.
Dad, will he be okay?
Don't worry. Mike has always been strong. Even when he catches a cold, he recovers quickly. And Mary is with him, so there's no need to worry. I soothed worried Jim and took him back to my house. Having not seen my grandson in months, I thought this time with him would surely be enjoyable. Though feeling slightly guilty towards Mike, I decided to make these fleeting moments into happy memories.
Jim, when we get to my house, how about we play with some toys I used to play with?
I had carefully kept toys and other items from when Mike and I were children, intending to let Jim play with them once he was old enough. I had just recently cleaned them up.
Really? I want to play! Yay!
Jim's excitement at the mention of old toys reassured me. After arriving at my home, Jim and I spent some quiet time watching old cartoons he wanted to see and playing nostalgic board games. That night, as I was preparing dinner, I asked Jim what he wanted to eat. Normally, a child would request their favorite food like hamburgers or pizza, but Jim seemed perplexed, more hesitant than reluctant to answer.
What's the matter?
You can tell me what you like. I'll make anything for you. Since he didn't answer, I felt like pressing him further might make him feel pressured, so I suggested he wait in the living room and watch TV. I prepared what I thought might be a child-friendly menu and called Jim to dinner. However, Jim didn't seem to want to come to the table.
What's wrong? Don't you want to eat?
Jim shook his head vigorously in response to my question.
Then why?
Jim looked at me with a puzzled expression and asked,
Grandma, am I allowed to eat today?
I was so shocked by Jim's words that I wondered if I had heard him correctly, suspecting I might be mishearing. However, when I asked the question again, Jim's words turned out to be true.
Eat today? You're supposed to eat 3 meals a day, aren't you?
When I pressed for clarity, Jim suddenly ran out to the yard and started pulling up grass. Shocked by Jim's sudden strange behavior.
Stop that!
I ran out, picked him up, and brought him back inside.
Why? Why can't I do it? Grandma, I'm hungry.
You're hungry, right? That's why I prepared this for you. But why start pulling up grass?
Because Mom always says I shouldn't eat unless I've helped with something.
The words Jim uttered left me astonished, and I decided to ask for more details about what he meant. According to the story, after Mike went on a solo business trip, Mary began to demand that Jim help around the house and be a good boy, and if he didn't listen, he wouldn't be fed. So, Jim would wait for Mary to leave the house while she thought he was asleep and then search for any food left in the house, or wait for Mary to return if there was nothing. Tears wouldn't stop as I heard about my grandson's shocking way of life, and I remembered a visit to Mary's house. Back then, Mary said he was eating a lot because he was growing, but I now wonder if he hadn't eaten until then. Why did I pretend to understand and agree, even though I must have felt something was off? If only I had realized then, if only I had noticed the signs sooner, I thought, filled with regret and reflection, and an uncontrollable anger towards Mary.
Listen, Jim. It might not make sense now, but your mom is wrong. You don't have to help out or be a good boy to deserve a full meal. You're going to grow up, remember that.
I reassured Jim as I sat him down again, enjoying a hearty dinner together, and after dinner, we enjoyed dessert while watching cartoons together. After making sure a satisfied Jim had fallen asleep, I messaged Mike, promising to call as soon as I felt better, not to contact Mary unless I reached out first, as she had requested. But I could no longer keep such a promise. I messaged Mike and immediately got a call back. I was worried Mary had restricted access to his smartphone due to being unwell, but hearing from him so quickly was a relief.
Mom, what's going on? Jim hasn't been fed while I'm away? Just like I told you in the message. Isn't Mary there with you? Huh? Mary? There's no way Mary's at my solo trip location. I left, entrusting the two of you to Mom.
This led to a discrepancy with what Mary had said.
Mary left saying she was going to take care of you because you were sick, leaving Jim with me.
Sick?
That's not true. If I were, I'd have contacted you.
Indeed, that makes sense. If something happened while away, Mike would surely contact. But this time, there was no such communication, and I only learned of the supposed illness from Mary. Thinking about it now, the excuse of not being able to contact because of taking care is clearly strange. It's as if she's keeping us apart to hide something.
Now that you mention it, I remember Mary strangely telling me not to come home even if I get a long holiday.
Only then did we both realize Mary had been lying to us. Further discussions revealed that all of this was news to Mike, including what Jim had said about Mary leaving at night. With each story, Mike's anger towards Mary grew even over the phone. After hearing everything, Mike said he'd take leave the next day to return to Jim, ending the call for the day. Mike, who returned early the next morning, came to my house and tearfully embraced Jim, who had come to the entrance with me.
Dad. Welcome back. What's wrong?
Jim.
I'm sorry for being such a terrible dad.
It seemed Mike had made up his mind after yesterday's call, determined to divorce a person who would treat his own son this way and go out to play. Suspecting Mary might be having an affair since she acted this way in his absence. Looking for evidence at home, Mike couldn't find anything in Mary's room or closets, but checking the PC history revealed a hotel reservation for two, suggesting she might have been staying out with someone. Though it was slight, it was enough evidence to suspect an affair. Mike hired a detective agency to investigate the infidelity. A week later, unaware Mike knew everything.
Mike's health has improved, so I'll return tomorrow.
Mary contacted me. I immediately forwarded the information to Mike, who decided to take a day off and wait at my house for Mary to come to pick up Jim. Unaware of anything, Mary came to pick up Jim, heading into what was about to become a chaotic situation.
Jim, I've come to pick you up.
At the door, Mary met the angry gaze of Mike. I locked the front door to prevent Mary from running away and guided her deeper into the house to set up a place for discussion.
I've heard everything from Jim. It seems you haven't been feeding him properly while I was away.
Mike, with a fierce look, confronted Mary, who, avoiding eye contact, murmured in a small voice.
It was discipline,
she said. Angered by her attitude of not making eye contact, Mike presented further evidence from the infidelity investigation and copies of hotel stays for two, demanding a divorce and custody of Jim.
You can't be trusted with Jim. I can't be calm thinking something might happen to him. Wait a minute. That's terrible. It's not like I did this because I wanted to. So what? You were blackmailed like in a drama. That's why you went to a hotel alone with someone you don't love? Isn't that too convenient? It was tough for me too. Since Mike went away, I had to take care of the house and Jim all by myself, and I was exhausted.
Mary explained that the stress of managing everything alone while Mike was on a solo business trip led her to take out her frustrations on Jim and seek comfort in an affair. Mike, desperate for sympathy, threw several photos of a man on the floor. evidence he had only recently learned about from Jim that Mary had been going out at night, timing when Mike was away for work, and had been seen happily chatting with a boyfriend. With all this evidence, can you still say the same? I'll say it just once more. We're getting a divorce. I'm taking custody of Jim. Got it? Fine. I don't care anymore. Do whatever you want. We're getting divorced. I'm going to marry someone who loves me. Shut up. I told you I'd only say it once more. You're pathetic, Mary. With Mike's dismissive words, Mary, her face turning red with anger, struggled briefly with the lock I had engaged before hurrying out of the house. Jim momentarily tried to stop Mary, but I gently held him back. Jim looked at me, questioning why I stopped him, but I just looked straight into his eyes and shook my head. Dad, did you and Mom have a fight? Jim, not fully understanding the situation, stared at Mike with a stunned expression. Listen, Jim. You might not understand it now, but Dad and Mom didn't have a fight. We said goodbye. But from now on, we'll live happily together. Mike, trying not to add more stress to Jim, met his gaze and smiled while patting his head. I could only watch from the side, but I decided to support them as much as I could in the shadow of Mike's kindness. Later, additional investigation results from the detective agency showed that Mary's lover was actually married, and once the affair was discovered, a significant compensation was demanded by his wife. Mary had trusted her lover, but he chose to rebuild his relationship with his wife, leaving Mary alone. Attempts to reconcile with Mike were futile as she had already been served with a restraining order by a lawyer. Mike, realizing he couldn't leave Jim alone after this, switched to a fully remote job and decided the three of us would live together in my house. Jim, initially confused but now accustomed to the new environment, knows the whereabouts of items in the house better than Mike, often asked about the location of the nail clippers. I ensure Jim never goes hungry alone again by preparing homemade, warm meals daily, enjoying the food and conversation as a family of three. To prevent Jim from having to gauge people's moods or expressions based on hunger, and so we never have to see such a Jim again. Hoping only warm memories of family will remain in his memories from now on. Today, I again feel happiness seeing their faces full, enjoying the delicious meal I prepared.